The arena fell silent as Zixthera emerged from the eastern gate, her obsidian carapace gleaming under the artificial suns. 8 feet of pure predatory evolution, she was the pride of the Veltar Empire, a warrior who had never known defeat across 17 star systems. Her mandibles clicked in anticipation as the crowd's roar washed over her like a familiar symphony. Across the blood-soaked sand, the western gate creaked open. What emerged was disappointing. The human cadet couldn't have been more than 20 standard years old, barely reaching Zixthera's chest even when she hunched forward. His uniform was standard-issue gray, wrinkled and bearing the insignia of the Terran Defense Academy. No armor, no weapons beyond the ceremonial training blade at his hip. The boy, for that's all he was, looked terrified. Admiral Kethvar leaned forward in the observation deck, his 6 eyes gleaming with cruel satisfaction. The human delegation had been growing too bold, demanding equal representation in the Galactic Council. This would remind them of their place in the natural order. "Begin!" the announcer's voice boomed across the arena. Zixthera expected the human to draw his blade, to assume some primitive fighting stance, to at least attempt the warrior's death his species seemed so fond of in their historical records. Instead, Cadet Marcus Chen did something that stopped her cold. He sat down, right there in the sand, cross-legged, hands resting on his knees. His eyes closed, and his breathing became deep and measured. The arena's roar faded to confused murmurs. Zixthera's combat instinct screamed at her to strike while her opponent was vulnerable, but something made her hesitate. In 30 years of fighting, no opponent had ever simply sat. Her mandibles twitched uncertainly. "What are you doing?" she called out, her voice carrying easily across the arena through the translation matrix. Marcus opened his eyes, startlingly. Blue, she noticed, and looked directly at her. "Meditating," he said simply. "My grandfather taught me this when I was scared." "You should be scared," Zixthera growled, though with less conviction than before. "I am Zixthera the Destroyer. I have ended the lives of champions from a dozen worlds." "I know," Marcus nodded respectfully. "I watched your match recordings during the flight here. You're incredible. The way you flow between combat forms, the precision of your strikes. It's like watching art in motion." Something in Zixthera's chest clenched. When had anyone ever called her fighting art? It was always about the destruction, the intimidation, the fear in her opponent's eyes. She found herself studying this strange young human more carefully. "Then you know you cannot win," she said, taking a cautious step forward. "Probably not," Marcus agreed. "But that's not really why I'm here, is it?" In the observation deck, Admiral Kethavar's expression darkened. "What is that whelp playing at?" he muttered to his aide. Marcus continued speaking, his voice carrying a strange calm that seemed to spread through the arena like ripples on water. "They sent you to break me, to humiliate my species, to prove that humans don't belong among the stars." He paused, still sitting peacefully. "But I don't think that's who you really are." Zixthera felt something crack in her chest, not bone, but something deeper. "You know nothing of who I am. I know you were taken from your clutch mother when you were barely past larval stage," Marcus said gently. "I know they filled you with combat stimulants and genetic modifications until you became something that exists only to fight and kill. I know you haven't seen your homeworld in 15 years. The arena had gone completely quiet now. Zixthera's breathing became ragged. "How do you—" "Because I actually read your file. Not the propaganda version they give the crowds, but the real one. The one that mentions you graduated top of your class in xenobiology before they conscripted you. The one that notes you've sent anonymous care packages to war orphans on 6 different worlds." Zixthera's legs trembled. No one was supposed to know about that. Those children, left homeless by conflicts she'd helped create? She'd told herself. It was just disposing of excess resources, nothing more. "They made you into a weapon," Marcus continued, his voice soft but carrying clearly through the arena's strange silence. "But weapons don't send toys to orphaned younglings. Weapons don't choose to use non-lethal takedowns when lethal would be easier. Weapons don't cry at night when they think no one is watching. The great warrior's legs gave out entirely, and she crashed to her knees in the sand. "Stop," she whispered, but there was no force behind it. "You're not a monster, Zixthara," Marcus said, finally rising to his feet. "You're a person who's been hurt and used and told she's nothing but a killer for so long that you started to believe it." He walked toward her slowly, hands visible and empty. The crowd held its collective breath. "I'm not here to fight you," he said when he reached her. "I'm here to remind you that you have a choice." Zixthara looked up at him. This small, soft creature who had somehow seen past 30 years of careful conditioning to the person she'd buried so deep she'd forgotten she existed. Her mandibles trembled. She began, then stopped. Words seemed inadequate for the earthquake happening inside her. Instead, she did something that shocked the entire galaxy. She stood up, turned toward the observation deck where Admiral Kethver sat with his mouth agape, and spoke in a voice that carried to every corner of the arena. "I forfeit." The arena erupted into chaos, but Zixthara barely heard it. She looked down at the young human who had somehow accomplished what no weapon, no army, no government had ever managed. He had freed her from her cage without throwing a single punch. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. Marcus smiled, the first genuine smile she'd seen in longer than she could remember. "Now? Now you get to decide what Zixthara the person wants to do with her life." For the first time in 30 years, the galaxy's most feared warrior began to hope. And in the observation deck, Admiral Kethvar learned something that would reshape the Galactic Council's understanding of human warfare forever. Sometimes the most devastating victory was the one that didn't require fighting at all.